Now, the latest figures have shown that up to 1.6 million homeowners will face a mortgage hike of almost £3,000 this year. Labour's accused the government of not doing enough to help households.
Let's talk to the chair of the Labour Party, Anneliese Dodds, who joins us now. Good morning to you. Right, so you say the government isn't doing enough. This is all down to interest rates and things. What would you want the government to do?
Good morning and Happy New Year to you as well. Well, we really do want the government to be taking action here. We've seen, unfortunately, a huge cost of living crisis in our country. And of course, this is just one aspect of it. As you say, 1.6 million homeowners who are going to be facing an average of £2,880 more on their mortgages when they remortgage. Now, of course, some of that damage, unfortunately, is already done. You know, a large amount of it, sadly for many people, is down to what happened with that Liz Truss crashing of the economy. We immediately saw that feeding in to people's mortgage costs, unfortunately. But we really do want to see the government now doing all that it can to try and get people's costs down, you know, whether it's the cost of housing and mortgages or indeed the cost of other bills, including energy. So, for example, one of the big factors that remains around mortgage costs at the moment is the lack of supply of housing. Labour's announced radical plans to make sure the planning system is actually working so that we can get those new homes built. We'd also be acting to secure our economy because economic instability has been a big part of the reason for those really big interest rate hikes. So we've set out our fiscal rules very early as an opposition party to do all we can to try and provide that economic stability. We won't ever again have that kind of chaos as we saw under Liz Truss, but we'd be acting on other areas as well. You know, we know, for example, if we were insulating homes, if we were making sure that we had homegrown renewables and new nuclear delivered in our country, then we would be getting people's energy bills down as well. Unfortunately, the government's doing the opposite and keeping them artificially high.
Forgive me for interrupting, but isn't the problem here that you're in election campaign mode, you're highlighting a short-term, immediate problem and a very real problem that a lot of households are facing with remortgaging, but what you're offering as a solution is actually very long-term. So what you're effectively saying is that if Labour comes to power at some point this year, for those people who are struggling to pay their mortgages every month, you've got no solution for them.
Well, you're right to the extent that it will take time to turn our economy around. Labour's been really upfront about that. I think we've seen so much sticking plaster politics, you know, announcements made one day to be pretty much forgotten the next, not actually improving the situation in the long term for people. But re-establishing economic stability would have a really significant impact, and one which could be delivered really quite quickly. I mean, of course, we've seen the reverse. We've seen economic instability having a very speedy negative impact on people's mortgage rates. But you're right that we do need to have a long-term approach, and we need to be upfront about that. And Labour has been clear on that. That's why we set out missions for government. And our mission, for example, to have our country growing the quickest out of the G7, we're really clear that's not going to be changed overnight. It is going to take time, and we're really upfront and open about that.
OK, but, I mean, predictably, you are putting a negative spin on the mortgages because, actually, the average rate on a 2-year fixed mortgage has fallen to its lowest level now for nearly 7 months. So things are going in the right direction.
Well, that, of course, is in a context where it's been really challenging within that period and in a way that wasn't necessary. You know, a lot of this, as I said, was due to that Liz Truss crashing of the economy under the Conservatives. But actually, if you look over the last few years, certainly since 2010, what we've seen is a bigger shift, a shift away from home ownership being within people's grasp to it being out of people's grasp. And we've seen the age at which people, on average, are able to start getting on that housing ladder go up and up and up. So this isn't something that, in terms of its impact, has just happened overnight. We have seen, over all the problems in housing building. And Labour's really clear. We've got to get a grip on this. Labour will back the builders. We won't back the blockers. We think there does need to be more genuinely affordable homes in properly planned communities with the facilities there that people need. And we set out those plans early before a general election so that we can provide as much clarity as possible around them.
But how can people believe what you say? I mean, the Labour Party is trying to set itself out as the economic powerhouse party, the ones we can trust, the ones who've got everything mapped out, everything costed. Keir Starmer said in his big speech the other day, you know, it's not about tax cuts because we can't do those for a couple of years. It's all about growth, and we're going to pull the lever of growth, which is hugely important for this country. But that's dependent on your £28 billion green energy plan, which he said in an interview only yesterday is now nothing more than a confident ambition.
But that's because we've been absolutely crystal clear that we will not be moving away from our fiscal rules. So they're those rules around, for example, getting debt falling in relation to GDP, so in relation to economic output. Those rules that Rachel Reeves set out many, many months ago. And we did that a long time ago because we were determined to provide that stability. Now, opposition parties don't tend to do that. They don't tend to be clear about those issues so early. But we've seen the kind of economic chaos that's been such a big problem for our country that's really hitting people in their pockets right now, as we've been talking about when it comes to people having to remortgage at the moment. And we're really determined we won't have that chaos if Labour's given the chance to serve after the next general election. And, you know, quite frankly, I think for many people who are watching this right now, they know the situation that our country's in. They know that we've had much lower growth under Conservative-led governments over the last few years than the kind of average growth that we saw between 1997 and 2010. They see that difference. They also see that our public services are on their knees, and there are very few things in our country that are working better now than they were when Labour left office. I'm not saying everything was perfect, but I think people watching this will recognise that difference. That's why our country needs a change. We do need to see that general election now so that people have that chance to support a change.
Well, many people will remember back in 2010 there was the note that your party left saying there was no money left. So the Tory party didn't inherit the best situation, did they?
Well, actually, the Conservative Party inherited an economy that was growing. If you compare the situation in 2010 as well with that now, we've got far higher interest rates. Now we have public services that are on their knees. We have debt that's significantly higher as a country as well. As I said, no government is perfect, but I think for many people considering in particular whether their family's finances are better now in a healthier state than they were previously between 97 and 2010. Their experience speaks for itself and the statistics speak for themselves as well. You know, obviously I, as Shadow Secretary of State for Women and Equalities, particularly focus on women's economic situation. You know, the average woman is hundreds of pounds worse off now in real terms than she was back in 2010 at the same age. That is a big problem for our country, and we've not seen that kind of slide in living standards take place in many other similar countries to our own. That is because of Conservative economic mismanagement.
Anneliese Dodds, good to talk to you this morning. We'll do it again very soon, no doubt. Thank you very much indeed.